Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our very first awareness series featuring autism. My name is MarQue Munday, and I am your Nevada Classic Universe Woman for 2023. And part of my outreach and champion causes as I go through my pageant series is to bring awareness to different diseases, disorders, things that our community usually will either brush under the rug or we just don't have a lot of common knowledge about. And I felt that autism was very important for us to bring awareness to, as it is on a rise in our community at a staggering 44% today and looking to be at 50% by 2025. I have asked that everyone stay muted just so that we can keep the ambient noise to a minimum. And I've also asked if you could please turn your videos on. I do still have people coming in, and we ask that you'd please put questions in the chat, if you will, and then use your reaction buttons on Zoom. So as we're gonna go ahead and get started, I've already placed some things in the chat. They are links to resources for autism. Please feel free to add to that list, copy that list for yourself so that you'll have it and you can utilize it when necessary or share. This is the first of our awareness series in autism, and I'd like to welcome you to this Zoom. And we're bringing awareness to a neurological and behavioral disorder that has been on the rise in our communities for over the past decade, still growing. Some of the questions that I've listed for our awareness, and I want to make sure we are with our disclaimer that we are not doctors, and any information that you obtain, we do ask that you would discuss it with your personal professional medical physicians. And all of the resources that I have gathered have come directly from research on the internet. So you can vet that information by just following in and looking at some of that research for yourself. Some of the questions that I have brought up, and again, please do feel free to place your questions in the chat. What is autism? How do you get autism? What are some of the signs of autism? Is autism curable? And how do you navigate a adult person with autism? Now, the slides do already have many of these answers, but I have two guests that I've asked to come and join us on this Zoom because they have direct experience with autism, both professionally and personally. And so right now, I would like to take the time to introduce you to Ms. Cheryl Victor, who is the founder of two organizations here in Las Vegas, Nevada, that are both resources for families dealing with autism. That's Communication Autism Resources here, a nonprofit here in Las Vegas, Nevada, and Victor Autism Resources. And also Mr. Donald Williams, who is a single father, and he's joining us from California. He's a single father of an autistic son. He has given us some of the resources that he has collected in California. So I would like to get started by just going to a few videos that I brought out just because sometimes we're not completely clear on autism, its effects, children, how to spot it, what are the signs? Again, some of the questions that were listed.
Hi everyone, this is Rob, and I'm the father of three boys, Ian, Connor, and Alistair, who are all diagnosed on the autism spectrum. So we've had many emails and comment requests over the years for people who want to know if they or someone they care about has autism. I'll be showing comparisons of family to help contrast more clearly the differences in autistic people versus neurotypical people. Neurotypical essentially meaning any average person with normal brain function, no mental differences or disabilities. We'll be showing my sons versus their cousins in roughly the same age bracket. This isn't a perfect science, as you'll see my niece in here as well, and females often experience autism a little differently. But I believe this video will still be very helpful. Also, as with all our videos, please do your own research, seek professional opinions, and remember this video is a guideline, not a concrete diagnosis. Number 1. So this first example you're seeing is good eye contact from my nephew and poor eye contact from my son who has autism. If you have good eye contact, chances are low that you have autism. Generally speaking, people with autism have a hard time making long-term eye contact. It makes them feel uncomfortable. I've heard various reasons why this is so, but for the purposes of this example, just know that if the person in question has good eye contact and isn't looking all over the room, their chances of having autism have significantly decreased. Number 2, sitting still without fidgeting, rocking, or stimming. If the person in question is generally pretty good at sitting still and being patient, the chances of them having autism are significantly lower. Now, a word of caution here, and I can already hear the keyboards lighting up the comment section. Yes, every child is like a Tasmanian devil at some point and will refuse to sit still. What you are looking for specifically is odd tics, odd muscle movements, excessive hand flapping and finger movement, rocking back and forth repeatedly. And caution, a lot of babies rock back and forth on all fours. That's normal behavior. Also, look for repeating words or sounds over and over again, not in a learning way, but in a stuck behavior kind of way. Now, bear in mind, some of these behaviors may not be autism related, but may be related to a different or combined neurological issue, such as Tourette's syndrome or sensory processing disorder. Number 3, hitting all milestones, including verbal, walking, reading, fine motor skills, and so on. If your little one is making decent to good progress in the common baby and toddler milestones, again, chances are low they have autism. Sadly, I don't have a lot of video for this portion, and I'd have to go digging through old videos and hard drives to try and find enough, but I think this screen will suffice. Number 4, good social skills, not awkward. If you or a loved one has basic social skills, can make their way through a standard conversation with little sweat, chances are pretty low there's autism in the mix. I'm going to ask my sons and their cousins some basic questions, and you'll be able to see how they react. All right, Donnie, how old are you?
6.
What's your favorite color?
Yellow and pink.
Yellow and pink? What are your favorite things to do?
Pretty much anything fun is right now going on electronics.
Electronics, huh?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of electronics?
Mostly phone.
Yeah? Do you use an iPhone?
iPhone 6.
Nice. What kind of apps do you have on it?
I have no idea.
Alistair, how old are you?
I'm 6.
You're 6?
Yes.
What's your favorite color?
Green.
Green?
Yes.
Can you look at me? What are some of your favorite things to do?
Um.
You have favorite hobbies, things you like to do
Yes.
for fun? Can you tell me what those things are?
Things are.
Alistair? I
Yeah.
can't see you. Can you tell me what things you like to do?
Yes.
What are things you like to do? What? I can't hear you, bud.
This is crazy. You can't find a fucking
What are some
gas
things you like to do?
Come on.
Go to school.
Go to school?
Yes.
Yeah, what do you like about school?
In kindergarten.
You like kindergarten, but what do you like about school? You like any subjects?
Yes.
Like what? Well, I think you guys get the idea. It's kind of hard to have a conversation with the back of a head.
I'm in green grass.
Yeah, you like grass. All right, Branson, how old are you?
8.
8 years old. What's your favorite color?
Blue.
Blue. What kind of things do you like to do?
Play basketball, coloring, and playing with Legos.
Legos? What are your favorite Lego sets?
Harry Potter ones.
All right, Connor.
Hey guys, my rich stepmom is losing 13
Sorry,
pounds
this
per
is a
week using this new ice hack.
commercial.
It's so unfair. My stepmom found out about it from a video and she lost 50 pounds in 27 days, all thanks to this ice hack.
Connor, how old are you?
I'm 10.
10 years old. What's your favorite color?
Light blue.
Ooh, light blue. What are some of your favorite things to do?
Play video games, go to water parks, and play with my family.
Can you speak up a little bit so I can hear you? Sorry, it's
Play-
windy out here.
Play video games, go in the water park, and hang out and play with family.
Yeah? What's your favorite thing about hanging with family?
Well, I think I like playing in them in like favorite activity buildings, like Natural Museum of Curiosity.
At the Museum of Curiosity, that's a fun place. Cool. Anything else?
No.
Kyler, how old are you?
9.
What's your favorite color?
Blue.
Blue. What kind of stuff do you like to do?
Go on electronics, play with friends, and play with Hot Wheels.
What are your favorite Hot Wheels cars?
Probably Bugattis.
Ooh, Bugattis, like the Veyron and the Chiron?
Yeah, I have a red Bugatti up in my room that's like a toy, and it actually like drives and stuff.
That's awesome. All right, Ian, how old are you?
I'm 12 years old, turning 13, and I'm turning 13 this month.
Okay, great. What's your favorite color?
Well, let's see. I like pure shiny blue. I even like pure shiny red. Like maybe blood shiny red.
Okay. And what are some of your favorite things to do?
Sometimes I'd like to do devices when going out's not available. And I even like to go out and get some tasty things. I even like to eat out. And sometimes when I do devices at home, maybe I would hear Skillet.
Number 5, does not react poorly to lots of stimuli. Does you or a loved one act normal in public settings, especially areas that are noisy and have flashing lights or strong smells? Well, if they don't act up in these areas of high sensory input, chances are they don't have autism. Now, this one may be a little tricky, but essentially you need to determine if the person in question is getting fussy from the surrounding climate, or because they didn't get something they wanted, like candy from the checkout stand. Bear in mind that people with autism can throw tantrums too. It's not always a sensory meltdown, but the signs to see an impending meltdown usually relate to a person getting really squirmy, making lots of odd noises like growling, extra fidgeting and stimming, and essentially just looking really uncomfortable in the given situation. If a kid stops from acting up in public if they get what they wanted, then it's a tantrum. I'm not recommending giving into a child's rage-fueled whims. I'm just saying that if you're really uncertain which is which, this is always a good way to check. Just don't make a habit of giving into a tantrum, or your child will throw tantrums constantly. Also, this should be obvious, but I'll mention it to avoid the inevitable comment. Yes, anyone will become cranky in public setting that's loud, smelly, or has flashing lights if they stay there for far too long. I'm talking about after a few minutes to an hour or two maximum, not half days or full days of being exposed to high sensory input. Well, everyone, I hope this video was helpful. Obviously, there are other signs.
I think that gave us a pretty good understanding of what we look at. Some of the signs that we see will help us to identify. But as I said, I have 2 guests that I asked to come on to speak with us about autism because they have both professional and personal experience. And I'd like to first introduce you to Cheryl Victor, and she has a foundation nonprofit called Communication Autism Resources, as well as Victor Autism Resources. Cheryl, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, MarQue. It's always a pleasure. Thank you for mentioning both businesses. Yes, I'm the founder of Victor Autism Resources, which is actually a for-profit that helps families through their struggle with raising someone diagnosed on the spectrum. What I focus on is the communication aspect of things. As we know, there are 3 deficits, which are communication, social, and behavior. And I focus on the communication portion of things. That's definitely something that can change your life, to be able to communicate your wants and needs. And then I also have a nonprofit, which helps to offset the cost for those that may not be able to afford the services. I work with state grants where we provide iPads with communication applications to those that are nonverbal, or those who may struggle to communicate functionally. As you saw in that video, that was very difficult for some of those kiddos to do so. And then I also do have a 21-year-old diagnosed with autism as well. He's not 21 yet. Next week, I'm trying to get used to it. The fact that he could actually go to a bar is scaring me. He's 21. He will be 21 in a couple weeks. So yes, that's Victor Autism Resources, CAR, which is Communication Autism Resources, and my personal experience is actually as a parent of a 21-year-old, and I also work for the school district as an assistive technology services specialist. So I work with this community all day long.
Cheryl, thank you so much for sharing that and giving us some personal experience and history for yourself. In the video that we just saw, I noticed that most of these children were male. Is that typical?
It seems to be, according to data from the CDC, that there is a larger percentage of our males that turn out to have that diagnosis than the females. As the young man mentioned, that it could look a little different in girls, but usually when I visit rooms, the numbers of the males far outweigh the females in the classrooms.
As far as resources here in Las Vegas, Nevada, what would be some that you would recommend?
Well, I can definitely give my experience as a parent. Just like any parent, when I found out he was diagnosed, I actually felt pretty helpless. I think we all have in our mind the life we think our child's going to live or what it's going to look like. And, while they're in our bellies, right? So me being in entertainment, I thought, oh, he's going to go backstage with me. He's going to tour with me. He's going to be everywhere that I am. And once I received the diagnosis, it was a little different. It was kind of like, yeah, it was a sad moment for me because that person that I thought that I was going to have, once I saw the deficits, I realized it was going to be a different experience as a parent. So I started to seek out online, of course, our favorite place, right?
Right.
And just kind of talking to parents and getting in that space. And in Las Vegas, I first went to an organization. It's a large nonprofit that's been around since the 90s called Feet of Southern Nevada. And that stands for Families Affected by Autism Treatment, right? Families Affected Autism Treatment. I want to make sure I say that right. They're an amazing organization that helps you from when the child is diagnosed up until adulthood. So I kind of started out there and going to, parent support groups and asking questions. And I started, I was actually told to go to our Desert Regional Center, which is our state's support, fill out the application. It's not easy, I'm not going to lie. It is a lot of work, a lot of waiting list. I found out about ABA, which is Applied Behavioral Analysis, because my son had a lot of behaviors that it was impeding him from being in general education settings or even going to community outings. So I wanted to know how to battle that. And I went through applied behavioral analysis. I got on a lot of waiting lists for funding. And at that time, insurance wasn't paying for those type of services. So I had to seek out funding for that. So I'd highly recommend finding an ABA therapist or an organization that has a BCBA that is supporting the RBTs, which are registered behavior technicians. And those are basically the tutors that come into your home or that are on site working with the child. That made a major difference for me. As far as the social aspect of thing, I had the opportunity to find an organization called Sport Social. And they actually taught my son how to ride a bike in a park at the time. That was something I couldn't teach him how to do. I tried, it just couldn't happen. But I always thought, you know what, that's a form of transportation. So if I could get him to learn how to ride a bike, that would be fantastic. And it happened. And we ride bikes together today still. They also offer social groups because they understand that deficit of not really being able to do those learn to learn behaviors like play next to a friend like a typical child would do, or appropriately do dramatic play or play with toys like a typical child. So this place actually puts groups together of children, maybe 5 to 1 or 4 to 1, just depending on the individual, and kind of teach those skills, like how to make friends, how to appropriately say hello to someone, how to stay a social distance that's appropriate away from people. Our students have to be taught, or our children have to be taught how to do those things. And so those between DRC, Feet of Southern Nevada, Sports Social, we were definitely hitting all of those parts. The only thing we were missing was the communication. We did go to a speech therapist, And my son was tricky because he was what they call echolalic. So he was basically kind of like you heard the guy kind of repeating, like when he was or he wanted to give you a quick answer just to get it go away, like, yes, I'm done, right?
Yes.
So my son would repeat things, sing songs, but he would not come up to me and say, hey, mom, I need to go to the bathroom, or hey, I want something to drink. So I felt that part was always missing. He was my first and only child, so I didn't know what to compare it to. But once I saw typicals of his own age speaking, I knew that was definitely some deficits going on there. So we tried the speech therapy, and that's actually why I started the businesses, because I do feel there's still that deficit of the communication. And after getting the opportunity to work in the district with Assistive Technology Services, part of SSD, Student Services Division, and seeing the deficit, I decided to start this because not only was I affected personally watching my son struggle with communicating, but also seeing it in the community in the Valley so much. Seeing that deficit and being able to communicate is so important. Like, I can't even imagine if I could not, what that would be like. So my heart goes out to them. I totally understand them 100%. And my goal is to basically help what families and individuals get that communication that they need through assistive technology, through pictures, through iPads, through communication applications. So that's where I am right now. So I'm always happy to assist in any of those areas, whether it's personal or whether it's on a business side, to guide families through this journey, because it's not an easy one.
Thank you for sharing that and being as transparent. I continue to put in the chat some of the resources. So if you need to grab those before the Zoom ends, you can always click the little buttons on the side and you can actually download that information. Before we get off the Zoom today, I will go through some other resources and go online so that you can see where you can get to some of these resources that are being listed and talked about today. Again, I can't stress enough, I do not have a child with autism. I have not experienced it firsthand personally in my family. Yes, I have run into autistic adults and children in my life, but this is a staggering situation that boggles my mind because of the statistics that we are living in right now. And when something states that it's going to be at a level of 50% of a generation of people by 2025, I start to jump on a soapbox and start saying, hey, are we aware of this? So I'm very thankful, Cheryl, that you would share and that you have taken a platform. And Don, I'd like to introduce you now to Donald Williams, a gentleman out of California who is a single parent of a son with autism. And I'd like him to share some of his resources. At the same time, I'm going to go back to sharing screen with you so that we can see some of the resources listed. You can screenshot them for yourself. And again, they are in the chat, both of her organizations. And now I'd like to introduce you to Donald Williams. And again, he's coming out of California. Thank you so much, Donald, for joining us today and sharing your information.
All right, good evening, and thank you for having me. Once again, I'm Donald Williams. I am just a father of a autistic son, a father of two, daughter who's the oldest, and my son who's the youngest, Donald Jr., who's autistic, and we was diagnosed approximately 18 months, and it's been a quite the journey, you know. It's a something. Forums like this help quite a bit because there's a lot of information that's out there and a lot of resources that are out there that can help parents. And really, it's kind of like finding the needle in the haystack. Once you do get to the needle, you have a place of clearing, and many times it'll lead you down a path. So with that being said, as a parent and a single father of autistic adult son at this point, it changes not only as an adult father. I couldn't expect my son to change because I know he had challenges, so therefore I had to come to his level for challenges. And in doing so, one of the first resources that we, the Department of Developmental Services, which is, or the Disability Act, which is nationwide, which basically states that every child have a legal right to an education, a fair education. And so that's kind of a big statement. So I'll kind of drill down on what that really means. That means that if you have a child with autism, then therefore your school district in your county has a responsibility to educate that child and try to get their resources. So here in Northern California, I go through an organization called the Regional Center of the East Bay. So normally in every state, which I have I didn't get a chance to really touch particularly into Nevada. There's normally, Regional Center is a nonprofit organization, but they operate under the Department of Developmental Services. So in other words, they do the outreach of services, and they'll take children normally from approximately 18 months all the way through adulthood, through the remainder. Much like Cheryl, once you find out your child is autistic, I'm a pretty active guy, known to be a pretty athletic guy, and I figured that, much like Cheryl, that hey, my son will follow me on the field, he'll follow me while I'm coaching and things of that sort, and didn't realize that no, that's not necessarily going to be the case. It just requires you to do many things. What I do encourage most parents is don't hide from it. Right? Autism is real, and understand you have to be the champion for your child, and champion for them, and be their advocate, right? And as a parent, I will say it's probably one of the most difficult roles you'll ever have to take, because you're now solely responsible in making decisions for another human being. And sometimes, and you may sometimes have to make those decisions and you don't feel good about any of the options, but a decision still has to be made. So it can be a challenge. So with that being said, through Regional Center, there's a bunch of resources, right? They will, and I would encourage, whether you're in Nevada, Georgia, wherever you are, go on your Department of Developmental Services, find out what nonprofits that they work with to provide services to children of autism. And I will even go as far as say, don't stop at autism, because we got early on, we got resources through cerebral palsy, right? Because they were, the two really doing the same thing. So don't channel your energy with helping your child. Right, and what you'll find is a bunch of resources. So much like Cheryl, we found out early, we got him connected into resources, and also what I would say as a parent, don't be afraid to say my child is autistic. He has a disorder, which would be considered classified as a disability. And the reason why I say people tend to hide from that, well, that's probably the biggest mistake you can make, because if you hide from it, you don't get the resources. If you openly state what you have and and the needs for your child, what you'll find is there can become a floodgate of resources. Even from an early on child, where the regional centers, my son was young, they provided diaper services for him, and on a monthly basis, they provided home care services. They brought in ABA services to the home. They brought in speech services, occupational therapy. We even had them support. There was a study done at Stanford University. So we took him there for a study. They connected him up with probes and monitors, and and just read his brain waves, and it took a complete study, gave us a complete report. We took him to UCSF. They gave us resources on the best way to allow him to learn. And I'm giving you these resources from these institutions doing large research, and it cost me zero, simply because it was going through, we recognized what was going on, and we advocated for these resources through the Regional Center and Disability Act. Because remember, your child has a right to learn. So therefore, which means the state in your county has to give them every resource and every chance to learn. If you don't dig for the resources, I guarantee you they won't. Much like Cheryl mentioned before, there's different organizations. You know, we got speech therapy through what the Scottish Rite organization here in Oakland, California. And we had speech therapy for a couple of years for my son, you know, before he even got to elementary school. So to help work on his communications, we got resources to help teach him American Sign Language, as well as teach the family American Sign Language, right? You know, so therefore to offer communication. So we had communications, whether it's going to be sign language, speech therapy, auditorial resources, as Cheryl mentioned, iPads or whatever you may be able to use to help the child, you know, adapt the resources. Those resources are there. Now, what I will tell you is it's going to require energy. Right? You know, it requires energy and it requires focus. It's easy to walk away, right? But I think once you kind of bust through and kind of find your stride, what you'll end up finding is there's enough resources in for you for your child. So therefore, I'm pleased to say that I've been able to have resources for my child since he was approximately 3 till he's now 19. It'll be 20 this year. Especially as a African American male, the challenge that for me was looking at him as a child was sometimes the world doesn't always treat us fair. And the only thing I've been afraid of is what if my son was to go out and his behavior strikes someone in the wrong way and they're not aware of it, and something can happen to him. Because when you look at children with autism who are on the spectrum, they live normal lives. They tend to have more accidents or causes that could cause disturbances in their life, right? So I mentioned that simply to say, get your child as many resources as you can, and I'll kind of go down the second area. We're talking about in-home support services. This is kind of tied with normally your county and kind of Social Security. Understand if you have a child with autism, they can get Social Security from pretty much birth, right? At the beginning, once they have a diagnosis and so on. Therefore, and they'll receive that under SSI for the remainder of their life, right? So therefore, those also become resources that you have in the home that you use. So in-home support services basically is a organization that's done here through the state of California and in different counties. So what they do is they will assess your child and so you're an adult, and they'll determine how much resources that they need, because you as a parent, you still have to go to work. I'm an independent business owner. So I got a business to run. There's times when I have to travel. Therefore, I need resources to be able to come in. Care for him, not only just care for him, but also teach him in the next item, which kind of goes hand in hand, kind of independent living skills, right? So therefore now, sometimes if you haven't had a child with autism, sometimes the simplest thing has to be trained,
Yes.
such as, day-to-day activities, making up your bed, wash your face, brush your teeth, grooming, things of that sort. But, if you get those resources, then those things become very natural. And what you'll find is your child will then have the ability, you'll start to see their milestones, and they are able to integrate into the community, with their skill sets, that they have. Put NPS, that's normally kind of normal once they kind of get into school, because and the reason why I put that is non-public schools, your school district by law is required to educate your child, right? And many times if they don't have the resources, there's what they call non-public schools, which are schools and institutions that are designed to help educate and get these kids on the best track that they can from basically elementary all the way until they're 22 years of age. It's the law. They have to do it, right? So therefore, don't feel that, oh, well, my child is not going to be able to fit into a particular school, or the school is in your school district. And with that being said, that means that school has to provide transportation for that child, whether they put them on a bus with an aide or they send an individual car to pick them up and drop them off. And I say that to say most people are like, well, you know, I tell my neighbor looks at me all the time like, man, why does your son get picked up by a black car every day? You know, man, you paying for him limo service? No, it's not limo service, but you know, he gets picked up every day and dropped off every day to go to his schooling and his activity, and he will have that until he's 22. That's when he was going to his high school. Then, you know, once the high school ran out of resources, we then found a public school that can service him and serve him well. So I say all that to say, and I'm just touching on a small amount of things, right? There's resources. There's resources. You know, you just have to, you know, figure out where they are and really start with your Department of Developmental Services, right? You know, and ask them who are the nonprofits that you work for. Where can I get speech? Where can I get occupational therapy? Where can I get, you know, adaptive programs? There's community organizations where, you know, much like Cheryl stated, my son has been in what we call e-soccer, right? So there's a soccer league for kids with disability.
Is that ESOK?
ESOCCER, just e-soccer. So, and also know just for the Little League, right? You know, hey, I was a baseball player. Well, Little League has what they call a challenger league, right? And there may be a challenger league in your community. If not, you may be able to start. And they actually sponsor kids. They actually play on the field every day. There's coaches out there. They, you know, and so there's basketball leagues that do the same thing. Right, you know, that's on the sports related, but there's other things called therapy through what they call physical play, tumbling. It's a therapy that's proven that through tumbling, it actually helps function. You know, there's drumming functions. There's a bunch of resources, in other words, right? You know, you just have to find what's going to fit you and your child.
Donald, thank you so much. I mean, you've given us a plethora of resources. And again, these resources we should check out in our individual cities, states, obviously the areas that we live in, to see what's available. I'm just going to flip our screen. These are some of the resources that Donald mentioned at the top there, and then a few resources that I found. And the bottom resource, this IACC, was a resource that I just, out of the blue, I just Googled autistic resources by state. And literally it came up, and you just scroll down and it literally goes state to state, organizations and resources that are available. I want to make sure we are covering resources to help with awareness so that people can get the services that they need as well as help.
While you're doing that, MarQue, I'm just going to piggyback on a couple of things that Donald mentioned.
Please.
I love the fact that he said that about not being in denial of what's going on, because with like anything else, you can't fix something or help something that you don't acknowledge. I would definitely recommend getting a diagnosis right away, because without diagnosis, you're kind of, you know, pigeonhole yourself into not getting those services. You'd be actually surprised at how many free services there are available, even within your own school district. My son did go to public schools. He was in the autism program, but there were things like assistive technology available and different things available, ABA services, potty training that I didn't even know were available at the time, just within my own school district. So it's about you asking those questions and doing all of that stuff. I also want to end by saying the journey was worth it, because now my son is an IT professional. He works in information technology, and he uses a lot of assistive technology. He gets to work by booking his rides online with the local paratransit system that does come door to door, which I believe Donald mentioned. But this is just through the public system here in Las Vegas. But now he does his own thing and he has his own life. And, you know, I'm also looking for a caretaker that'll come by the house every now and then and check on him. Because like Donald, I entertain out of town and, you know, want to do those things. And so I tell people, do the work early, you know, when they're young, because you're still going to want to live your life too. And you're going to want them to have a full life. And in order for everyone to have a full life and be happy, you have to do the work. So thank you, Donald, for your comments and the resources in California.
Thank you. Yes, both. Thank you so much. Can everybody see the screen where it's the IACC? Is that up on the screen for everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. And I don't want to scroll too fast, but I believe I put the link for this in the chat already. Scrolling down, you can see where it has the administration for community living. And then of course it gives the link, the Autism Society, Easter Seals, State Autism Profiles, Association for Maternal and Child Health Programs, National Association of Councils on Developmental Disabilities. And then it starts an entire list from A all the way through, state by state, with the different organizations that you can start with in your area to get resources. You can actually Google what state has the best resources. And I believe when I did that, it was either Minnesota, I believe it was Minnesota or Michigan, one of those two that came up having one of the best resources for autism. But as you can see, I'm just scrolling slowly as we go through. And right here in Nevada, we can see the Autism Treatment Assistance Program, Nevada Commission on Autism Spectrum Disorders, programs for persons with intellectual disabilities. You can read this. Each state, again, there are requirements because it is a disability. And so we want to make sure that we are going through and finding everything that's out there. Obviously, when you have your child or loved one that is suffering from autism, you want to make sure that you can get them the necessary resources so that they can thrive. One of the things we haven't touched on or talked about, and please, Cheryl, chime in on this one. This is not a cultural disease. This goes across all cultures, races. The only thing that we have seen that I have researched and found is that, again, typically it's more prominent in our males than females. Doesn't mean that females are indemnified. Cheryl, your findings?
Yeah, I'm definitely finding out. I believe when my son was diagnosed, it was like 1 out of 66 or, 100 or something. It was just a different number. And every year I just keep hearing the numbers. Just more and more of people being diagnosed with autism, right? Our children. And it's at an alarming rate, right? And then definitely seeing that dynamic between boys and girls just all the time, like if there's a class of 8, because that's the max here in Las Vegas, Nevada, I usually I see one girl in that group of 8, right?
Right.
So I just kind of see those numbers. So when the CDC states that data, I believe it because I've watched it for the last 20 years. And so definitely just my observation, not being a doctor, but just my personal observation, assessments, assessing children that have those deficits.
Mhm.
It's definitely more so where we're even trying to find ways of inclusion, right? Like how to get those kiddos in that gen ed class, or what can we do as a district, because things are changing, as far as how many children are coming in that are being diagnosed.
Okay.
I'm curious to know about the other people that are in the room as well. I'm sorry, I don't want to
Absolutely.
cut off your questions, but eventually I'd love to know that.
Oh, absolutely. I just wanted to hang till the end for Q&A. We've got about 20 minutes that we've set in line for our Zoom call today. With the research that I've done on top of course, our interview, and you can find an interview that Cheryl and I did to dispel some of these basic questions about autism, and that's listed online. And I'm going to go back to the share screen just for a second, and then we'll pop into some Q&A. In autism not being based out of a race or a culture, I found doing some research that in the African American community, when they're tested, it happens later. And I'm not exactly sure why that is, but I'm going to ask Cheryl or Donald if you know. And I found 3 YouTubes that I looked at because I wanted to see specifically for the African American community if there was something different. And they all did state the same thing, that the diagnoses was falling, it was not coming out first. It wasn't getting diagnosed till later down the line. So do we have any experience with that or anything that you can share?
So I know when the earlier video the gentleman was talking about, he was looking for cues. So and I think we found cues as well. It was small things. You see the development of your child, then all of a sudden you see something stop. There's many different theories on this, right? On how this happens and why it happens. I'm not saying this as a formal statement, but we did notice some things after my son had his shots, right? So then therefore we noticed his eye contact, his ability to respond to things, such as if we were walking down the street, a dog come barking up to the fence, he wouldn't look, right? When before, where if anything startled him, you'll see those reactions. There's a lot of different things that came out regarding that. So, and I think what happens is when you're talking about maybe in our community, a lot of times we're like, oh, well, he'll just, he'll grow out of it. Look at in hindsight, I was born in the 60s. And if I go back now, like, there's probably a couple people who could have been put on the spectrum, but, we just thought, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I totally understand that. Thank you for sharing that, Donald. Cheryl, your thoughts on that?
I was just going to say, I think there's definitely a taboo in the Black community, but after living in Las Vegas, which is a very diverse city, I think that it's not that far removed from every community. I think everybody wants their child to be typical. Like I hear every parent say, well, I want my child to talk.
Absolutely.
And so it's not I think in our community, of course, I only know of my community because I'm a Black woman, right? So I would have to say I have heard those things in our community, like, it'll go away, like Donald said, or he'll grow out of it, or, nothing's wrong with him, the different things. But once again, I've seen those same type of statements or just denial from fathers or, different things like that, not wanting to get that information about your child, your love, right?
Right.
And so I think it probably hits every community. I would have to talk to someone in those other communities to know what that really looks like. But based off of my experiences, I think like I said, I don't think it has a color line. Like I think that there are some parents in all communities that kind of feel that way due to the lack of resources sometimes, I think. So it's more of a socioeconomic thing. I think a lot of ethnic families do not go for those resources because they don't know they're there. They maybe can't even get the bus to get to the resources to fill out the applications. Maybe they don't have a computer to download, the applications. It's a lot of work, so, I think it does cross all lines, but I can only speak for the community that I grew up in. And I grew up in a pretty much, a middle class, diverse neighborhood. I shouldn't say diverse, but definitely it wasn't just like an all one thing neighborhood. But someone else would have to tell me, and I'd be curious to know what it does look like in other cultures and other spaces. What does that look like? But based off of my experience, it looks like it's pretty similar.
In the research that I was looking at, and I digged really deep because I wanted to make sure that we were covering bases and giving information that was pertinent that everybody could use, and at least some resources that could get people started or help them along the way. Cheryl, I'm with you on this one now. Let's open up and meet some of the people that are here with us and find out some of the backgrounds. And just so you know, there's something called OutSchool that's here in Las Vegas, and they do programs for soccer and other outdoor activities for children with autism. So it's called, I put it in the chat, it's called OutSchool, and you can Google that. And they actually do have a listing and how much it costs and that stuff too. So we have Donald who's with us and Cheryl who's with us. These are the guests that came on to be our experienced personal and professional with autism.
There is a fantastic, she made me think about this, Jan. Thank you for your story. I'm glad to see success with your granddaughter. She reminded me of a fantastic young lady who is actually kind of like a icon in the autistic community. Her name is Temple Grandin, and she actually has autism, diagnosed autism years ago. but she's famous now and she's done some amazing work and has done some different amazing things. So if you can look her up, her name is Temple Grandin, like a temple, like a church temple.
Check
And
the
then
chat.
Grandin, I want to say Grandin or Don, but she's an amazing, they have movies about her, but it kind of gives you an insight because, you know, sometimes as individuals, you're like, what are they thinking? What's going through their minds? You know, you wonder these things, right? And
Right.
so that movie gave me a lot of insight as a parent and as an educator on what it looks like in their world. So Temple Grandin, make sure you check that out.
I will second that, you know, because she gives it from a autistic approach in which she sees and feels and so on. So very good resource, you know, very, you know, and it can be very inspiring, right? You know, so you'll start to understand.
So I found two things. Temple Grandin, G as in George, Randin. Is that correct?
Yes.
Or is it
It's Grandin with a G, like George, yes.
Grandin with a G like George, okay. And yes, I found a movie on her. So there is a movie, it's on Prime Video. So that looks like I have something to watch. Okay, somebody else that has joined us, please. I see Robert Brown is here with us.
Oh, good evening. I was expecting to speak. I came here to join and listen and learn and support my brother, Donald Williams. And, you know, just say it's amazing what Donald has done to raise his son, DJ, and raise an amazing young man. And just say we're proud of you, Don.
Proud of you, Donald. Thank you. Thank you. That was accolades for you, Donald. But I mean, I want to thank you for coming on and taking the time, Robert, because having autism in the family, you too have this experience now to know what that's like and the challenges and so on and so forth. So thank you again for coming on and sharing in his life and his experience.
Absolutely. Thank you for the information. It was good information to hear and learn.
Well, you're welcome. And thank you to our guests, both Cheryl and Donald. Very good resources. I have Ingrid Morgan. You're muted. Can you unmute?
Unmute, yes, I'm
go.
unmuted. Yes, hi, MarQue. I am actually an invited participant, you know, so I came out to support you and what you're doing in your work. I am personally not affected by anyone in my family or friend circle that has autism, but I do recognize the importance of learning about it and being able to support people that are truly affected by it, you know, through their family and loved ones. So I'm just open to learning and hearing more and learning more about it and seeing how I can in some kind of way maybe support and help. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Ingrid, what do you do?
I am a registered nurse and a life coach.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yes. We talked about the statistics and how autism is moving into the 50 percentile by 2025. So it is growing at what I feel is an alarming rate. I know that
absolutely
when we're looking at the future of our communities, they will be there in large numbers. They will be there. So we definitely have to have some resources for them, and we have to be aware of them, because I was speaking with a colleague that I work with whose son is autistic. Sorry, her grandson is autistic, her daughter's son. He goes to school right here in Las Vegas, Nevada, and their school is not providing resources for him. They do not allow him to use the resources that the family has gotten to help him. He's very sensitive to sound. in crowds, he hides under the lunch table. So when they go into the lunchrooms, and so far, their resource at the school has done two things. Called the mom and said he repeatedly is doing this behavior and it's not acceptable. And no, he can't wear his headphones.
Wow. That's
So
terrible.
right. And that's here
Yeah.
in Las Vegas. So Cheryl, I wanted to share
Well,
that information with you.
yeah, and that stems from a lack of knowledge and understanding.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's why it's so important to attend sessions like this so we all can learn more. You know, like I said, it doesn't personally, I don't personally have anyone in my family or my friend circle, you know, none of my friends have children that are affected by autism, but in some kind of way, it touches all of us.
Yes, it does.
You know, it absolutely does. And it's, you know, shame that those educators aren't better educated in knowing how to handle something like that. And it's up to people like you to help them learn and take that message out there. You know, maybe you can get into the school system. I'm not sure how far you've gone with this, but possibly that's something that could be done.
Well, Cheryl is in the school system and an advocate, and she has her organizations. And so I am definitely trying to support her and also bring this awareness so that we can help our children and young adults.
Absolutely.
Both in our community and, you know, around the world. Did you?
I just want to say there is definitely a disconnect between home and school.
Absolutely.
So that is why I did start this, to hopefully bridge the gap between the two, because I also was affected as a parent, not knowing what was available to me and what was happening during IEPs, right? So yeah, the school district definitely has things, but you have to fight as a parent and you have to get those advocates for sure.
So I'm a share resource. So if you go under one of the organizations I talked about, Regional Center of the East Bay, just go to that site. All those it's here for California. The upside about that site, it has a ton of resources. It even has workshops that you can sign up on to go how to handle IEP, how to call IEP, what the things to ask for, what advocate organizations are in your area. You know, from not only from advocates from an educational standpoint, legal advocates, right? You know, so if you need to have legal services for there, and those services are not just based in California, they're across the country, right? So therefore, if you don't know how to, you know, what are you supposed to do on IEP? It will tell you, it will walk you through. There are classes and workshops that they have almost monthly. And I think that would be a great resource for someone who you're talking about if the school's not providing them what they need. They'll, you know, it will arm them with the tools that they need and be able to go in and say, hey, here's what my rights, here's where it falls. And that school has to do something. You know, because if they don't, it's, you know, like I said, at the very beginning, every child has a right to a fair education. Yeah.
Yes.
Across the board.
Yes. I see. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Cheryl, for putting that in the chat. Again, remember that the resources are in the chat. For the Zoom, there's a picture of a page down there, and you can click on that so that you can download the chat section and have those resources for you on your computer so that you can just click on them. I stuck a YouTube as well in there that was specific to the African-American community, that a little bit of background culture for African-Americans dealing with autism. They do talk about a little piece that we hit, which was stigmas and not wanting to label our children, but also this one opened up because it came out of Indiana. It was it's a short 2-minute news clip of them talking about why you want to get the diagnosis. So those are just different things that in your moving about, we share these so that people see it. It's 2 minutes, but then it gives them two parts. One, autism, two, cultural background, and 3, the reason why. To learn about it, know about it, and get the diagnoses so that you can get the resources. One of the things you said, Donald, that was very, very helpful is that knowing that they can get Social Security from their diagnosis so that there is funding for them. And right now here in Las Vegas, we have Cheryl, and she has both her profit and nonprofit organizations that are really kicking butt here in town, doing outreaches, getting support, and building in the community. So we want to continue to do that. This, again, was the first of the awareness series for my platform as Classic Universe Woman here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I would like to continue this series along. Many people don't know that autism and dementia are actually linked, but there is a cross link between them. We're coming upon Black History Month, and there are other things that I'd like to actually bring to the forefront, like sickle cell, leukemia, lupus, all of these disorders and diseases that hit our community for Black History Month. But I will continue with the platform, utilizing my platform to bring awareness to these things and look for outreaches in the community so that I can assist and help, especially with us here, Cheryl, in Las Vegas. These were some of the resources. I want to move to the next page. If you don't have her information, please grab it there. You can screenshot it. Please share it and get in touch with Cheryl. And Donald was sharing with us, he is a parent of an autistic son. And if you'd like to get in contact with him, I won't put his information on the screen, but I will give it to him personally if you'd like to contact him. Again, this was the beginning of a series of awareness. We started with autism, and we will move into the ones that you see there on the screen. I know Cynthia is here with me. Cynthia, would you like to say a few words or?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, yes. Thank you for putting this on. I definitely support you and the others speaking today. It's an important topic, and very little is known by most people that don't have exposure to it. My experience is just in the last 20 years, one person, a dear friend of mine, her son was diagnosed with autism when he was 3. It took time. It doesn't always show itself as that diagnosis from the outset. So the first thing they noticed about him was when he was 10 months old, he didn't respond to conversations or be curious about the world around him. And so the diagnosis at that time was thought that maybe there was deafness was the issue. And so just observing my friend, it seemed to be a very challenging experience for the parents going through this process. And a lot of sacrifices were made in their family because in California, there were some services offered, but they weren't at the level that other states have. So the family divided for the best care for the son to live in Ohio. And they seem to have a phenomenal program for autism and very customized per student, per child there. And so eventually the family came together when the opportunity presented itself, but for job reasons and things like that, they were separated. So now that he's older, then the concern is for, as an adult, there's another child that his brother doesn't have autism. So, there's an impact on the siblings in a situation like that needs to be addressed as well, and how it impacts them over time as they develop a lot of attention was devoted to the child with autism. And sometimes it appears on the outside that the other son without autism doesn't have the same, attention or time, So that was a concern that I witnessed and was concerned about because I love both of them, and then now that they're older, my friend is, like 55 or so, thinking ahead too. He can't necessarily care for himself as time goes on. There's legal concerns, very costly to do estate planning, guardianship, things of that nature. It doesn't end. So it's very challenging. And I think just, being educated about it, so that you can help people in your community. And I think people that, like myself, just being a part of this conversation, it makes me say, how can I help? Because, it's like, well, it's not my problem type of thing. I don't know anyone that has it. So then I just don't, have no knowledge of it, conversations, So this is great. So thank you for doing this in a nutshell.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing and knowing that this information needs to be shared, because just being here now, you have some information that you can share when you run across someone or someone has a question. So everybody, thank you so much. Are there any things that maybe we didn't hit that you'd like to talk about, to share, or ask a question about, or maybe get in touch with Cheryl, with her organization? Remember, her information is there on the screen. Just go ahead and take a screenshot of it. Thank you, Donald, for sharing in the chat. Everybody for putting the information in the chat that's there. Super helpful. I got a movie out of the deal, so I'm going to have my popcorn and watch a movie tonight. That's going to be, interesting to see. I don't ever want to slight this and make it seem like it's not important by saying, oh, it'll be fun. It's going to inform me and give me information. At the same time, I'll be able to sit back and enjoy a movie, which of course I don't get to do very much. So thank you for sharing that information. Any parting words, Cheryl?
Yes, for those of you that are brave, that come to these type of events that are not totally affected by family, and you mentioned ways that you could possibly help. Definitely in the community, donations are great. We're going to have a baseball game at the Las Vegas ballpark where we are selling tickets, and some of the proceeds will go to help the community that struggles to communicate. And we're always looking for volunteers, to come and help in certain events and different things. So if you are interested in that type of work or support, please feel free to reach out for me with that as well.
Okay. Cheryl's information is on the screen there. So go ahead and screenshot it, grab it.
So MarQue, I'll want to speak on one thing.
Yes.
It sounds like what I'm hearing from Cynthia, and I also heard it from Cheryl as well, just regarding resources for the family. I even looked at Nevada after we spoke, I guess, last week. And Nevada has, a IHSS, in-home support services. Most people tend to think of that as for the elderly. That also can be used under the autism spectrum, meaning if you're raising a child or an adult, or you're caring for an adult with this disorder, then therefore you are the caregiver, right? And those resources are available to you, so you can bring in, have a supplement to bring in a resource, or supplement to be able to do some of the things that Cynthia stated, get guardianships or conservatorship, right? And because you're doing the work already, and really most states and organizations would rather support you than have you put them into a place where they have to support, right? So therefore, you'll end up finding out it can take a lot of burden off the family.
Yes.
But if you don't ask for it, I think I shared with MarQue and Cheryl the way I found out about it was at a baseball game, and the statement was told to me like, Donald, why are you hanging out with all the guys? Boys are dumb. Hang out with the mom. We have all the resources, and they, gave me a list of resources to go after, and all of a sudden I said, hey, I did all these resources, and what does it mean to me? She was like, you don't even understand what you have. And I was like, nope, I didn't. And all of a sudden I submitted the paperwork and I got like nine months of checks.
Nice.
And I'm thinking like, whoa, you know, and I received it coming home for vacation, but I didn't know, you know, unfortunately I had to tell the guys, hey man, look, I ain't hitting on your wife, but I'm hanging on the other side of the field. Yeah. But I say that to say those resources are there so you can get, you know, so you can have care, you can get the guardianship, you can get the conservatorship for your child, you know, not only as an adult, but you can do it for them as a child, right? You know, because this disorder and disability is, although it can be improved upon, you know, I don't, you know, the complete recovery, we really don't know, because you'll still see individuals with their own individual, I don't want to call them quirks, but personalities, right?
Yes. And that was something I found in researching and in looking and digging. And I was digging because I wanted answers to some of these questions. If you are diagnosed with autism, this is a lifelong disability. It's not something that you grow out of. It's not something that goes away. So I think as we continue to bring the awareness into the community, I think the next thing that I know I would like to talk about is, like you said, Donald, conservatorship for this community. And Cheryl and I, you and I have talked about living wills and trusts and setting things up for our families. And that was just on a regular. So this coming into this community is something that is absolutely necessary to be done for them. This is not something that you would want to wait for, because we are not promised the next day. And in something happening where their primary care person gets sick, happens to expire, then they're left. And that we definitely don't want that to be the case or situation. So getting that paperwork in order from the very beginning is probably second to their diagnoses. Just my thought.
Well, MarQue, I want to say thank you. Job well done. Thank you for the invite. And I appreciate all those who came on and supported. And hopefully, you know, I look forward to many more of your outreaches.
Yes.
Sure.
Look in the chat, everybody, grab the information in the chat. I know the 2 resources. Thank you for sharing that, Lyric. And that will work. Those resources will work for autistic or regular. I don't mean to say it that way. I just don't know the term to say. I can't hear you, Cheryl. You're muted.
Typicals or
typical
individual.
Okay. Well, I want to say thank you to everybody for your time. We are spot on at 7:30. And so by all means, I will share this with both Cheryl and Donald. I will chunk it down so that there is a video on it. And for those who joined the call, they can share with you the links for that. With autism, make sure we get out there in the community and share our knowledge and help those that need a helping hand. Okay. Thank you so much, you guys. Have a great evening. Thank you. Much appreciated.
Good night.
Good night, Donald. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good night.